Hey, I don't know if anybody else will be joining us, but here we are. Well, so how many of you have been planting things? Good.
Good. Good.
Yeah.
We're waiting for our soil, but
Right.
we do have a report to make.
Yeah. So, Lynn, when you get the soil, do you have a raised bed, or where are you going to put your soil?
We've made raised beds from old lumber that we've had when John took the deck apart last summer. The big trusses that were under it with his big tall.
Yeah.
We use those to make a bed, and we have cardboard to put under it, and we have to pound some stakes in on either side of it to stabilize it
Uh-huh.
for our soil to arrive.
Okay, but you've got the boxes already, so
Yes.
and when are they expecting to bring the soil?
They don't know. They emailed us and said, we're busy, you're in the queue, and we'll let you know when we have a delivery date for you. And it might it might even be the second week of June, but we're moving forward. And I have my
Well,
and
that's
we bought seed potatoes yesterday from Dearborn. Is that the name of it?
Dearborn.
Yeah, we bought that, and we got the azomite that was on my list from you. So
Okay.
we're going to do that in some tubs.
Okay, well, good.
Progress. Snail's pace, but progress.
I've got some little tiny starts of my potatoes are showing from, that's been almost 3 weeks, been 20 days since I planted them, but they have a good 8 inches of soil on top of the potatoes, so they've been pretty busy. So so I'm getting little tiny sprouts coming up. So now that's going to get exciting to watch them.
Well, I'm going to be excited too when mine do that. We got just a little bit of advice from the farmer, but I was waiting to hear from you, especially about how to use the azomite.
Yeah, well, I just mixed the azomite.
Or tonight, whenever.
Yeah. Okay, so so Nancy and Amy came out and got some strawberry plants and some other plants. And so I'm anxious to hear what's happened with those things.
They mostly came to me. And I got the strawberries in right away. And then I got the other items in the perennial bed at the front of my house, but that took more work because I had quite a bit of overgrown stuff.
Yeah.
And so my next step is to label everything and then mulch. So, but the strawberries are very happy. I had a few extras and got those in. Just plunked them in next to the rhubarb because there's some bare ground in there. And so we'll see how they do underneath the rhubarb. That's an interesting experiment.
Yeah.
And we're going to do a big box rebuild. I have raised beds, but they're 22 years old and they're some of them are starting to collapse.
Yeah.
The cedar, untreated cedar, natural cedar sitting in the ground holding dirt. About 20 years is what you can get out of them. So next year when husband's home, he wants to do a big project and put in new beds and organize them differently.
Yeah.
And so, and I planted the potatoes. Thank you, Delisa, for some seed potatoes because I couldn't find them in Anchorage. And I am experimenting. We have a potato box. I think I mentioned to you all that we have potatoes in there and they would get scabby. And so I planted in there, but I actually planted less potatoes than we have done in the past following that. Simplified Gardener online was recommending they be 9 to 12 inches apart. And I'm pretty sure we put them a lot closer than that in the past. And so I'm trying that with some steer manure in the bottom and then a lot of dirt on top. So no hilling. We'll try that. And then I've tried the buckets. I built 4 buckets and I didn't have enough compost to do total compost, but I started in the bottom with compost and then kind of a rich dirt and just 2 seed potatoes in each bucket.
Good for you. And these are 5-gallon buckets?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have 4 of those. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
I'm excited about that. Yeah.
Always an experiment.
Yeah, it is an experiment. And now, you know, all the work is done, right? Except for some water.
Right.
So it's good.
Right. Right.
So when I planted mine, can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, okay. I planted my strawberry plants, my 3 strawberry plants in 3 baskets, and then my potatoes in probably 3 or 4 gallon size planters, 1 each. And then I planted the chives in a individual pot while I figure out where I want to put them in the ground permanently. I haven't figured out where I want to put them in the ground permanently. And then I planted, those are the things I got from you. And then I planted radish seeds and starts of kale and lettuce in pots.
In pots. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you know, it's really great to be able to plant in pots when you don't have a big garden bed to plant, and then it's more manageable, you know, and all of the water stays in the pot and all of the plant food stays in the pot. But of course, then you're also not connected to the big, you know, fungal network, which also it feeds everything. So I mean, that's the flip side of having it all contained in the pot. But you can get some really good results if you have a big enough pot and you don't overplant it. That is the hardest part. So
Farmer said you can put more potatoes in there and you'll get more, but they'll be smaller. You'll get the same amount of potatoes.
Right, a bunch of little ones. And maybe that's what you want. I mean, you know, I don't really want, I mean, it's fun to pull these giants out of the ground, but you know, it's not necessarily what I'm looking for, because those of you who've taken my part 2 class know that I like to boil potatoes that are not really huge and have those as snacks. You know, I eat them like an apple when they're cold boiled potatoes, and they taste really good. Not the baking kind of potatoes, but the boiling type. So yeah.
But we really did enjoy our visit with you, Delisa, last Friday. It was really fun to see your garden and see your house and see all your plants, and
come out.
That was terrific. Yeah.
And it has changed so much in the week because I know I was thinking about you yesterday when I was walking around, and I was thinking, has that only been a week since they came out? I mean, it looks like a different place, you know. But everybody's does, I'm sure, because I mean, things are just growing like crazy now.
Right. Overnight, the delphiniums look like they're growing about 2 inches a day.
You know, probably are.
Really, so you can measure them.
Measured them, but things are growing fast. Yeah. So Sue, tell us what you're doing. Yeah, you were talking to me before everybody else got on, but let's hear what you're.
Oh, okay. So my husband built me 2 18-foot long by 3-foot wide planter boxes on the south side of our house, and I put green beans only in those 2 boxes. And then he built me, gosh, I have a fenced-in area to keep moose out, and he just finished this week building me a whole bunch of cedar boxes, and they're probably 12-foot long by, I think he built them like 18 inches wide.
How wide?
I think 18 inches wide, maybe.
Okay.
I'd have to ask him. Two of them are wider than that, but I think most of them are only like 18 inches wide.
Okay.
And so I have a lot of stuff planted because there's a lot of them boxes. So if honestly, if everything comes up and grows, I'll just have to be giving stuff away because I got a lot of stuff planted. It's going to be interesting to see what happens.
That will be great. Well, you know, the more vegetables you eat, the better your body's going to like it.
Yeah, but I could only eat them so quick.
I know. Well, the good thing about the kale and collards is that you don't have to be in a rush to eat them, because you can just keep, leave them out in the garden and just keep picking them all through the fall. You just go brush the snow off. They bring them in frozen, just run, they'll thaw out. And we usually eat our kale all the way till like Thanksgiving.
Oh, that's good to know.
In the garden. Now, of course, things like broccoli, it needs to get eaten when it needs to get eaten, because otherwise it flowers. Spinach will go to seed quickly. Lettuce, you can keep picking lettuce for quite a while, but then it will be done. It'll turn into a lettuce tree. It just sends up the stalk. But kale and cabbage, cabbage too. You don't have to pick cabbage. You can just leave it out in your garden until you're ready to pick it. And if you get a big rainstorm, it might split, because if it's as big as it wants to get, and then you get a lot of water, then it can split. Then, you need to pick it, because otherwise you can use it, but use it right away, because otherwise it'll start to spoil inside.
What about spinach?
You don't have to be in any rush about. But cauliflower, if you're growing cauliflower, when it's ready, and it's just about when it's ready, you need to pick it right then. And you can tell when it's ready, because it'll keep getting bigger and bigger, and it'll still be totally round, but then it starts getting lumps on it as the little florets start to expand, and then it's going to flower next. So when you see it starting to do that, you need to pick it, because it's not going to just keep getting bigger in a good way. It's going to get bigger in a I'm done. And so I always plant, like I'm only planting 6 at a time of those, and then a few weeks later I'll plant another 6, so that I can keep having it, but not all at once. And
But you start yours from seed?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. When did you start them from seed?
Well, I've started them I've just got my garden book right here. I was just having some fun reading earlier to see. So I started my first vegetables April 10th. And they were totally big enough. And then I thought they didn't look as good as I wanted them to be. They looked a little leggy. So April 27th, I planted more. So I have 36 kale plants.
Wow.
That is a lot of kale.
Woo.
So that's the most I've ever had. So April 10th was the first that I planted. Well, actually, I did a little demo in one of these classes when I was showing you how to plant the microgreens. I also planted one little 6-pack of kale, and that was on March 14th, I think. So that was, but that was just sort of a little demonstration. So that one got big pretty fast, but mostly I planted April 10th, and that was plenty early. So they're pretty for starts out in the garden, but they really grew well this year, because I was using that kelp tea stuff that I've been talking about from the Southside Market, and I mix it half and half with water, and I put that on with every watering, and I'll tell you, everybody's been so happy. And now that they're out in the garden, I'm not doing that, watering them with that. But.
So when you start your seeds in the house, I've heard people tell me you have to put the grow light down on top of that flat and then keep it coming up as it grows. Otherwise, you're going to get leggy plants.
Yeah, that's sort of true. I used to do that a little more extremely. So these are my latest brand new babies. I planted those maybe a week ago. And the reason I'm planting them is because of succession planting. So these are some more cauliflower, 3 more packs of lettuce, and then a couple of more. These are beets, because beets are kind of, let's see if I don't know if I'm putting that in the right place. Can you see my finger?
Yeah.
Okay, so these two are beets, and so I've got other beets that are, you know, already in the garden, and then I've got some more that I'll be putting in, because they're another thing that you can, if you really think ahead, which I usually think I'm going to, but I don't usually do it. But this year I'm doing it, you know? So I actually am doing the succession planning. So, oh, well, I guess I didn't show you what I was going to show you. So you can see the lights. They're not like right on top of it, but I do have these chains so I can raise and lower them. But, you know, you can experiment with that. It is nice. So these guys down here, let's see, can you see my hand now?
Yep.
Okay, so those are peas that I'm going to plant out in the garden. And I have never done that before. Started them in the house and then transplanted them out in the garden. Those not my microgreens. These are my microgreens here, you know. But I've really discovered that it was a good idea, because the only problem is I plant a lot more peas than what I can start in the house at one time. So that there's 36 plants in that tray, and 36 plants is nothing compared to what I normally grow. So I planted my first 36 in the house and put them out, and then my next 36 and put them out. And so those I'm going to put out later today. But, you know, I figured out how to, I'm going to go outside with my phone, and I'm going to leave this on, and nobody will be here, but you'll see me anyway. I'll just look like another person. I'm going to be in two places at once. I've always wanted to do that, but actually I won't look like I'm here. It's just this is going to keep working. But this way,
Do you always start everything from, do you always start everything in your house as a seed? You don't plant right into the ground?
I do most of my stuff from seed, but I'm going to show you in a second. I'll be there in a second. Okay, can you see me?
Yep.
Oh, good. Okay. So I'm gonna, let's see. Do I look big or little?
No, normal. I mean,
I don't see myself big. I wanted to show you. Okay.
now we can see the garden.
Okay. So this is just from the deck, so you can kind of see the overall thing. But now I'm going to go down and show you the difference between all the things that I planted at different times. Okay, so these peas they're over a foot tall now. And these are the first ones I started in the house. And
In April.
What?
In April.
No, later. I'll have to go, when I go back in, I'll look. Yeah, if it was April, it was the very end of April, but it might not have been that. They don't take long at all to grow. So this is the second batch. So you can see they're shorter. But then all this bare stuff out here along the fence here, you see that bare over here?
Yeah.
Those I planted just the seeds, and they take way longer to germinate out when you just plant the seeds. I mean, like a good 2 weeks, whereas in the house, maybe 3 days to pop up, and then they grow like crazy. So I did see some little teeny weeny ones starting here. Can you see my finger?
Yep.
There it is. There's a tiny one. There's a tiny one. But the ones that are in the house that I just showed you,
Yeah.
it hasn't been more than a week, and they're already, you know, a couple inches tall. So they're going to go right in this area because I left that unplanted. But so the point I'm making here is that I'm going to have peas to eat a lot earlier than usual, because these guys that I'm pointing at right now, they're going to have peas on them weeks earlier than usual. And then instead of them all ripening at once, you know, I'll have the succession here because I plant, this is a double row. You know, I plant peas on both sides of the fence, and they grow really tall. They grow way over my head. And here's another one, double row. And so it's a lot of peas. So anyway, and then these are sweet peas, the flowers. And I started those in the house, and they just, I never have good luck with them until later in the summer, and they just struggle. They finally get good, but compared, if you just look at those compared to those, these guys look way healthier, and I don't know why. But anyway, so this way with the succession planting, you know, I'll be able to have things earlier, and they germinate in the house so much faster than they do out here because they're in a warm environment with warm soil. And if you stick them in the seeds in the ground, then, you know, it takes them a while. Okay, so what we're looking at here is different kinds of lettuce that I started in the house. And I planted it out about a week ago, a little more than a week, like maybe, it was in the ground, I think, when Amy and Nancy came last week, but I only put it in it, so maybe 10 days max. And then these are cabbages. And so the cabbages are going to get big. So I planted different kinds of lettuce type things in between, because those are going to get, you know, those will be done. And then I'll pull them out, and the cabbages will have more room. So anyway, I plant, yeah.
How many, like when you plant those lettuce seeds in the house, how many seeds are you actually sticking in one of those little squares?
Usually 2, because then I'll just pull, you know, in case some of them don't germinate.
Yeah.
But then I pull out you know, if 2 of them come up, then I pull one of them out. And so then I only have 1 in there. So here I've got all kinds of kale and Swiss chard, and then this is carrots. And I have a fence over this to keep my cat from digging in there, because I have this wood chip mulch everywhere else. And so she doesn't dig in that, but where there's bare soil, she goes, oh, that's for me to have a party. So anyway, that's covered up. But so I've got 2 rows of carrots going down there, and 2 more rows close to each other down here. And so those I always plant in the soil. But this year, the peas and the carrots are the only thing that I'm starting in the ground, and the rest I started in the house. And so then, you know, these guys, if I planted a seed in the ground, they would be, you know, they would be like the ones that I just showed you in the house. They would look like a little hair growing out of the ground. And instead they look like, you know, I'll be able to start eating stuff pretty soon. The beets I used to always start in the ground, but then I was watching the video from that Simplify Gardening guy, and he talked about starting them in the house. And so I did that this year, and instead of thinning them out to just 1 plant, I did what he suggested. And of course, this is an experiment. I haven't ever done it this way. But so I've got a little cluster of beets growing together. And because each single beet seed has more than 1 seed in it. I think I told you about that before. And so they apparently like to grow that way. I used to thin them out and just have 1. And it's like, well, it didn't occur to me that maybe they like to grow together. That's why they're in a seed together. So I'm going to take you down to the potatoes, just so you can see what the youngest baby potato looks like.
Have you ever tried growing onions or green onions?
Yep. And the green onions do fine. My other ones, I always have a problem with root maggots. So I guess I need to figure that out. So this is a very small, let's see, where, can you see it?
Yep.
That's a tiny potato. And so there's 4 potatoes in this. This is a very big pot. These 2 pots, I have 2 this size. They're also very big. My hand is 8 inches. So those are probably an 8-inch wide pot. I put 3 of in those. And then I put 2 in each of these. And this is probably about a 14-inch pot. And then all the rest of these just have 1. What you see growing in here is just weeds. But I planted some potatoes that I had left from last year that had longer sprouts on them. And so they're coming up. There's one and there's one. But they had scab on them. So that's why I didn't want to, it's an experiment to see if they'll have scab on them when they're in new soil in a confined place. So anyway, that's what things look like. So I have most of the vegetables in the garden, except I'll show you. I don't know if you've ever seen currants. These guys, look at the currants. Let's see, am I doing it right? I don't think I'm showing you right.
We can see your finger. Now we can see them.
Okay. Yeah, this whole bush is just loaded with currants. But anyway, I'm just planting these in the garden. I was working yesterday, and so here's the rest of these plants. So these are the last ones that I started, I think May 27th. April 27th. So that was about a month ago. And, they're pretty good size. They're not huge, but pretty good size. So that's my second crop, because the other ones I planted 2 weeks earlier, so they're going to be big. But it's not even June yet, and so starting them in the house is a huge help.
Yeah.
And the tomatoes, I don't usually get excited about tomatoes because they're just not one of the things that loves to grow here. I gotta show you. These are my anemones, and these are the ones I'm trying to give away to everybody because they spread like crazy. But so Amy, I think you got some of those. So I don't know if yours are blooming yet, but that's what they look like when they do. So, I did plant some more peas out here. This is my, I call it the hex bed. It's just these are where we used the boards off of our deck, Lynn and Bob, many years ago, but Charlie had to replace them. So these are some beans that I started in the house, and I'm just experimenting to see how they're going to do. But then the other ones are in the greenhouse because I know they're going to like it better there. I don't think I know where I keep thinking that the camera is at the other end because that's where I can see my little thing. Okay, so these are the beans in the greenhouse, and they don't look too different, but they're just getting started, obviously. But the tomatoes, I don't remember the data to look, but I'm going to get those strung up here because they're going to get tall anyway. So the greenhouse makes the big difference. So if all of these guys grow, I'm going to have a lot of tomatoes because I've got 8 full-size tomato types, and then I've got 6 cherry tomatoes in these pots, and I didn't plant them until, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks ago. Anyway, they're growing fast. So anyway, yeah. And the flowers I started from seed too in the house. So saves a lot of money that way.
And you start the seeds in just the pro mix like you do the microgreen growing?
Yep,
Okay.
that's what I do.
I think I'll try that next year.
Yeah.
The bark mulch that you have in the
Yeah.
outside, is that for food or is that for weeds? And do you put more on there later in the season?
This is the third year that it's on there, and it's still really thick. It is breaking down, but I'm not going to need any more for at least a couple of years because I put it on pretty thick. This was an experiment, you know, everything's an experiment. Life is an experiment. So there's my cat. I don't know if I'm pointing it in the right direction.
Yeah, we can see him.
Yeah. She says, darn it, I'd really like to dig in the carrots. But anyway, it's to keep the weeds down and the moisture in. And it was fresh mulch that was just, I'm just going to dig down and show you. It's not the kind you buy in the store that's all bark and everything. This is actually just wood chips that when MEA was coming out and clearing brush from people's yards, you know, in the ditches, they were just grinding it up. And so I got it from them. So you can see it's all different sizes, and that's what you need. You don't need that decorative bark stuff because you want this to breathe. So it doesn't look very pretty. It looks pretty ugly actually, but it really keeps the moisture in, and it's organic. So it is providing food for the microbes and the worms and all the other little creepy crawly things that like it. So I'm going to go back up on the deck.
And like if we got wood chips like they have at Northland Wood here, you know, people buy them and use them for their kids to play on, but that could be a treated wood. So you shouldn't use something like that.
Right. You do not want it to be treated wood. Right. So yeah, it's just amazing how big things are on May 30th. I mean, usually everything is just tiny, like these flowers, you know. I mean, they're not blooming yet, but they're pretty big already. So anyway, it's the starting them in the house and putting that oh, the sun's coming out. This is nice.
Yeah.
Watering them with that kelp tea stuff really did. I mean, because I always start things early, but they're never as big and robust looking as they are now. I mean, I've got stuff in here that looks like it's been planted a lot longer ago. Let's see.
Do you keep using that kelp tea outside too?
Well, I'm not doing that. Well, I am until I get it in the ground, but I won't. I'm going to turn this off so that I don't make okay, I'm coming back in the house.
Okay. Yes, I'm back. I know that if my phone gets too close to the computer, it makes a really bad noise.
Does that kelp tea have a brand name to ask for in a store?
It's they give it away. They make it at the store.
Is that a
give it away? You can get up to 5 gallons at a time. And so I'm not making my own. I mean, you can buy kelp as well and mix it in water, but they actually brew it like a compost tea.
Is this at South Side out on the highway there?
It's in the Value Village Mall, right?
Mm-hmm.
South Side Garden Center. There's one in Anchorage and one in Wasilla.
Okay.
But I won't be using it all summer. What I am doing is when I plant every single plant You know, I'm not planting the seeds, I'm planting the plant. So I dig, remove all the, it's kind of a pain. Have to move all the mulch out of the way because you don't want to mix the soil with the wood chips because the wood chips would not be good for the soil. I mean, they're okay on top, but you don't want it mixed in. So anyway, so I move that out of the way. Then I scoop down with my little digger trowel. I scoop out some soil, and I'm putting some compost in. I'm mixing compost, and I got that from the Susitna compost people. So I'm putting in a couple of handfuls of compost and then a little bit of that vegan mix fertilizer and azomite and a little kelp and a little alfalfa, just some different amendments that I have. I'm mixing that in to my little bit of soil right where I'm getting ready to plant that. And then I plant my seedling in there and water it. And so, oh, and I'm also putting some mycorrhizal fungi in the hole with it, which helps the roots to extend out into the ground with the mycorrhizae, the microbes that all connect, because they're so smart. I mean, they're like the microbiome in our body. They bring food and nutrients from all over the garden. Now, theoretically, I could put all my food for the garden in one place, like, you know, just pick a place in the garden, put all the food there, and then the mycorrhizal fungi would be able to transport it from there to the plants. Now, I'm trying to make it easy for them, and I put some food for every plant in their hole. But anyway, so that's what I'm doing as I plant, instead of watering with the nutrients. So when I first put them in the Pro Mix, there's not really food in there. It's a good medium. You can start your seed there, but then they need to be fed. And so if you don't feed them, they'll still grow, but they'll be more leggy. And so but when you put this kelp tea on them, they just get strong and healthy. And so that's why I do that in the house, so that then when I put them out in the garden, I've got a really nice, healthy little plant. And then I try to give them a really good environment to grow in by just mixing all these things in. And then when I'm done, then I put the mulch back over the top of it, so that now they're protected from, you know, weeds, and they don't dry out so fast and everything. Now, that's another thing that's hard to do when you're planting seeds. So like, that's why I have the barricade for my cap, because I can't put the mulch up around the seeds because it would cover up the seeds, you know? So you have to leave a little opening. Now, once the carrots get bigger, I mean, they're not even out of the ground yet, but once they grow, then I can put mulch up around them, but I can't do that right in the beginning. So you had asked me when I started something. What did you ask me? I'm trying to see when I started the beans. I know I didn't start them too early because they grow so fast. Oh, those pea seedlings, the first ones I told you that are like over a foot tall, I put those out in the garden on May 19th. So that's what, 11 days ago, and they were not very big then. So things just grow really fast. Okay, the snap peas that are out there now, I started them in the house on May 2nd.
Wow.
And they're already, and so the ones that I planted the seeds in the ground, they, you know, in a month, they won't be over a foot tall. I mean, once they get up, then they grow pretty fast, but it takes them a while to get up, you know, to germinate in that cold soil. So,
so just to be clear, you planted the peas inside on May 1st and you planted them outside on May 11th?
May 19th.
May 19th, so 20 days.
Yeah.
Okay.
I could have done it sooner because the peas that, let me see. Usually I'm pretty good about writing everything down, but those peas that I started in the house again that I just showed you, I'm looking to see when I planted those. Oh, I think, no, not May 27th. That would only be a couple of days ago. Anyway, I know it's been less than a week. But they look like now. And so, do I have it in the right place? So look how tall they are. They have, you know, I planted them in the house less than a week ago. So they just grow super fast. So I'm going to plant them in the garden today, this afternoon.
Well, where do you buy all your seeds from?
Any place. I just like Fred Meyer. Any place that sells seeds. I am going to experiment with saving some seeds this year, which I haven't been doing, but I have a friend in Anchorage who has been saving seeds. Some things you can't just save seed really easily because it takes a second season to go to seed, like carrots. But, oh, she did a cool thing. She let some carrots go to seed, which takes the second season. And so she plants a carrot in the ground. So I did this yesterday. I cut it off. I planted about that much of the carrot with the top in, you know, I mean, it wasn't cut off, you know. So anyway, so she's done that. And then they grow into a flower the second year. So, and then that flower will have seeds on it. So this year, she's growing rutabagas in the bed where she let those go to seed last year. The carrots go to seed, and then she had it covered with a fabric cloth to prevent the root maggots from going in there, which is what I need to do if I grow root crops. Anyway, when she took that off, she saw a whole bunch of baby carrots coming up. Which means that they reseeded themselves, which means we could plant our carrots in the fall.
Huh.
And they would come up and they'd be really early because otherwise carrots take forever to germinate. If anybody's ever grown, I mean, it usually is, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks. And then when they come up, they're a tiny tear. I mean, you can barely see them. And then eventually, you know, they're big and bushy and all that, but they really, to get them started. So if you could seed them in the fall, and then they would just come up as early as, like for her having them coming up now. I'm going to try that with the peas too. I'm going to leave some in the ground in the fall. And now the peas are easy to save seed from because you just don't pick some of the peas and they dry up. And then you've got peas. And you can do the same with the beans.
But you'd leave them outside all winter? Or you'd have to pull the pods off before it frosts and then set them somewhere to dry out?
Yeah, or you could leave them on. This year, when I went out, I didn't have a chance to clean up some of my garden beds before winter came. So like my peas just looked like old dead vines up on the fence all winter long. And so then early in the spring, I pulled them off and started cleaning up the garden beds. And I found some peas on there. And so here's one of them. And so I opened one up while I was doing this. The ground was still really cold. I mean, it was still frozen. If you went down deep enough, it was really cold. So I opened them up. And I'm going to show you what they look like. They look like pea seeds.
Oh, wow.
And so while I was out there, I planted one pod's worth. There's 6 of them in this pod. And so I planted one pod's worth. I just stuck them in the ground, this cold, icy cold ground. And I thought, I'm going to see what happens. They grew. And when I was cleaning up the rest of, pulling the weeds out a few weeks later, I saw little peas coming up, and I said, what are they doing here? I mean, because I'd forgotten that I did that. And then it suddenly dawned on me, oh, I stuck those in the ground just on a lark. They grew, and they're about this tall now.
Wow.
So I think we could plant peas as early as we could stick them in the ground. And these are the same ones that I was eating last year. So super easy. So that's one way to get seeds, and that way you don't have to buy them. But if you were using a hybrid, you probably wouldn't get the same, you wouldn't get the same result the second year. I mean, I think you would have to repurchase them if you're growing a hybrid.
What are some pea varieties that you like?
I like this sugar snap peas, and I didn't realize that they had them both bush and the tall kind. I always like to grow the tall kind because you get a lot more plant peas on them. But when I was looking through all my packets of seeds, and I saw I had another packet of the sugar snap, I think, and I saw it said bush, and I was like, oh, that was a mistake. I didn't intend to buy that. So anyway, I've got those out in the hex bed, like I was showing you. They're not up yet, and I'm just gonna, I had them, so I planted them, and I don't know, I've never grown them like that, but it's like they only grow about 2.5 feet tall, and supposedly they hold themselves up, and you don't have to have a fence. But I like growing them up on a tall thing. But anyway, I'm gonna have both, so we could have a pea party. Everybody could come and enjoy eating peas, because there's peas everywhere. That and berries. We're gonna have, and broccoli. Oh, because did I tell you how many broccoli I planted? I planted 18 plants to start with, and then they were looking leggy, so I planted 18 more, and now they're all growing really well. So I've got 36 broccoli plants, and that's a lot of broccoli. That's a really lot of broccoli, because they grow some pretty big heads, and then they grow the side shoots.
So how do you maintain the broccoli? I'm sorry, I didn't.
How do I do what with them?
How do you maintain the broccoli throughout the season? Keep them from.
I just let them grow. No maintenance to it.
Okay.
And yeah.
You when it bolts, I mean, do you try to prevent it from bolting? And spinach as well? Like, what do you do with those?
Well, I quit growing spinach because it was bolting like immediately. But the broccoli doesn't exactly bolt. It will go to flower, but if you pick it before it flowers, then you can just keep picking it. Eventually, you lose it, and they start flowering. But then I let them flower, and we eat the flowers, and I put them in the salad because they're totally good to eat. They have a really pretty yellow flower, and they don't taste like broccoli. They just taste good. And the other cruciferous vegetables do the same. So they all kind of look alike, and we eat them. I can't eat them all. I mean, you saw how big my garden is, but I pick them and use them for decorations on my platters and everything, because they're pretty. And then as I'm walking through the garden, it's just kind of like the Garden of Eden. You just pick something and put it in your mouth. And
you don't blanch your broccoli and put it in the freezer so you can use it in the winter?
I used to do that, and I would have a bunch of broccoli, and I just, I quit doing it. I used to blanch a lot of vegetables and freeze them. I might end up starting to do it again if the supply chain falls apart with this whole crazy world we're living in. But right now, I have not bothered to do it because it's a lot of work, and it doesn't ever taste as good as fresh broccoli. So I buy fresh broccoli. I also buy
But
some
at least you
frozen
know where it
broccoli.
came from.
What's that?
At least you know where it came from.
Right,
Well, there's that.
right. No, yeah, like I said, I used to do that. But with my berries now, I'm really into freezing berries because man, do they freeze well. And we put those on our cereal every single morning. We're putting black and red currants and raspberries on our cereal every morning, and we'll have even more next year because the berries keep growing. Yeah, Amy.
I had a question about slugs because I gave up on cabbage over the painful process of the slugs. So tell me, what do you do about slugs?
Sometimes they're a real problem. I will pick them off by hand, like go out at night and pick them off. And this is one of the places where I lose my compassion. Because I have a little container of vinegar and I drop them in the vinegar and they die a painful death. And I don't like that, but that's what I do. I used to carry them across the road and put them in the woods. And then I thought, I think they're all just coming back.
Some ducks. Delisa,
Ducks would be a good idea.
ducks would do it.
But if you don't have ducks, but the wool, like wool fleece, or actually I have some pictures I could show. Just saw this last night. The slugs do not like the feel of the wool, and if you put a little wool out, that's supposed to get rid of them. So, and what it looked like, wool fleece. So I don't know if like you're a farm person or if you're around farm people, but yeah, that's the latest thing I've heard.
Okay. Well, there are some other things that you can do to help, and that is to keep your garden cleaned up around it so that they don't have so many places to hide. One thing I'm going to try doing this year is pick the outer leaves of the cabbage and the other stuff. Anything that's like touching the ground, I'm going to pick it and have it'll be more of a contained plant instead of the big leaves that are out touching the ground. So I'm going to do that with all of those plants. And really, that's one thing that the Simplified Gardening guy said. You know, there are some techniques that people have used that one that I tried, it didn't seem like it worked very well. People will put like a container of beer out and they're supposed to fall in the beer and drown or get drunk or something. I don't know. Anyway, it didn't seem to work because I have a huge garden to try and do that with. And another thing that you can do is put like a board out on the ground, and that keeps a moist place underneath it. And then when you move the board, then there's a whole bunch of them underneath there, and so you can, pick them up then. It's just a way to kind of attract them. And I'm not into poison, so I'm not going to poison them. So a couple of, maybe 3 years ago, it was a really bad year for slugs. I mean, they were everywhere. When I take a walk along the road, they were crawling around on the road. There wasn't a garden anywhere near. And so it wasn't just the garden. There were just millions of slugs. But they haven't been that bad the last couple of years. I have some, but it can get really old. So I understand, but I am going to keep my big leaves picked, even though they look pretty. I'm not going to let them be out anymore.
And then root maggots?
Well, I think there's somebody here who knows more about this than I do, or maybe it's not somebody who's here now, but they were at another call. I guess my understanding, I'm not an expert, is that if you put some kind of a cover over the plants when they're small, it prevents the moths that lay the eggs in the soil, and the eggs when they're a larva, that's the root maggots. So if you can keep the flies out while the plants are getting established, then apparently that's supposed to work. You could look that up, but I've never done it. I just quit growing things like rutabagas and turnips because I had too much
Right.
trouble with them.
Yeah,
And-
I gave up on turnips over that.
Yeah.
I mean, they tasted fine, but you know, it's a little unappetizing to be cutting out all those maggots.
Right, right. And so, and I had the same problem with onions. If they were just in the ground for a while, like the spring onions, the scallions, but you know, the big onions, after a while they would just, and I could see when it's happening, you know, they'd have this nice big top on them. And then all of a sudden, well, not all of a sudden, gradually it would start looking less and less healthy and kind of shrinking and turning yellow. And it's like, okay, this is not good. And I pull up the onion and it's all turned to mush with root maggots. But it would not be that hard to just cover these, you know, plant them all in one area and cover them with this fabric, if that would take care of the problem. So I'm going to do a little bit of research on that before next planting season, because I would love to grow those things. And I don't have a problem with them in the beets. I don't know whether they don't like beets or what, but,
Yeah, I've not had a problem with them in beets either.
or potatoes.
And your octagonal bed would be great for those covers because it's narrower.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Well, I wish I knew more, but that's best I know. Yeah, Mary.
So I'm trying to find the simplified gardening guy online. So I think you said he's on YouTube, but is there any other option to find that particular guy?
Well, if you go to YouTube and just put in simplified gardening.
Okay, gardening. Okay, simplified gardening.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, there's some other guys.
He's a Brit, Mary. He's a Brit.
Oh, right. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then another guy that I love watching, his name is Charles Dowding, Dowding. Have you seen him, Lynn? Yeah. He's another Brit. And he has a market garden. He sells his vegetables. And oh, he's the guy that did the slug, how to deal with slugs, was Charles Dowding. But he's this kindly old man. He's probably not any older than I am, but anyway, he's just the, you know, who everyone would want for their grandpa, and or their uncle or something. And so he's just the neatest guy, and he really can grow a garden. And he's like me, instead of just being really, okay, as long as I can get things to grow, I'm happy. I like mine to have kind of a design element, you know, and he's like that too. So he, you know, he'll plant things in a way that looks pretty to him, as well as just being functional. But it's not just a design. He's growing vegetables, you know, but it's functional and beautiful. So I have a big appreciation for that.
Would you spell his name again?
Okay, it's Charles, Charles, and then Dowding, Dowding.
Thank you.
And he's this really unassuming guy. You know, some people with YouTube channels are pretty full of themselves. He's so much the opposite, but he's got something like, I don't know, 750,000 followers or some unbelievable thing. He's very widely watched, and I just came across him accidentally. There's a lot of gardening videos out there, and some of them aren't very helpful, but he knows his stuff. And he is really good at doing this, starting everything inside. He's the one that taught me about just me, about the beets, growing the beets in clumps like that. And then he shows you what he gets out there in the garden. And he's got these big beets, and he picks they're growing like they're pushing each other apart because they're growing right close together. And so then he pulls the biggest ones first, and then the others have a little more room. And anyway, he's a delight. He's a real delight to watch and very helpful. He never leaves a bare spot in his garden. So when he harvests something, he's got something else ready to plant. So you can really figure out how to use this space you have to its best. Yeah. Mary?
Before we go, I wanted to ask you the name of that vegan fertilizer. So like I'm trying to
Okay,
find.
the brand is called Down to Earth. And it comes in a little box. I guess it comes in bigger bags too, but I got a box and it's called Vegan Mix. And there may be other brands, but you know, that's the one I found.
Where do you get it? Locally?
Yeah. They sell it at the South Side Market, and they also sell it in Anchorage at Alaska Mill and Feed.
And what's that? You said something about some fungus.
The mycorrhizal fungi, yeah. Yeah.
Say it again. Micro what?
Mycorrhizal, MycorrHeal, I think. Mycorrhizal fungi. Mycorrhizae. And they have different mixes of them. I ended up with using two different ones. The first one that I bought was from Alaska Mill and Feed, and it was a mixture of all different kinds of microbes, fungi. And then when I ran out of it, I got some more at Southside, and that ended up just being one kind. They probably had some other ones, but Charlie picked it up for me and he didn't notice it was just one kind. But anyway, maybe one kind is all you need. I don't know. You don't have to use it. It's just that it's supposed to help promote the growth of the fungi that are attaching to the roots of your plants so that it gives your plants an extended root system. It's not actually extending the roots, 100 feet, but it's extending the reach because it helps to make the mycelial web of the fungi that are connecting everything. It's really, if you really like to learn about this sort of thing, Jeff Lowenfeld, yeah, he wrote a book called Teaming with Microbes. Teaming, Teaming with Microbes. And I read that book, I don't know, when it first came out. It's probably been 12 years ago or something. And that was just like such an eye-opener. It made me really recognize that, when we're feeding our plants, we're not feeding the plants, we're feeding the soil. And we're not really feeding the soil, we're feeding the microbes. So it's kind of like those of you who have been in my class, we talk about feeding our microbes and with the prebiotics and the probiotics and all that stuff. That's what this is like. It's just that our gut microbes are like the soil microbes that promote the health of the ultimate plant, So we're like the plant that our gut microbes are taking care of us, and those soil microbes are taking care of the plants. Sorry.
Yeah, you have a chance to take one of the talks with Dr. Gary Larson, the mushroom specialist, and he's been lecturing all around Alaska. He might be at something like the Palmer Cooperative Extension, something like. But he's always mentioning the mycorrhizal relationship.
Right.
So big as he says it the whole time, nothing but that,
Yeah. Well, and of course, nature does that automatically. It's just that we're helping that process to happen. So you just put a little bit in contact with the roots. So it's not like you spread it out all over your whole garden. Like with fertilizer and compost, you can just spread it through all the soil. But you want to just put a little spoonful of it right if you're planting seeds, you have it touching the seed. And if you're putting plants in, you want it down in the hole where the roots are going to be in contact with it. So yeah, that's how you do that. And again, you know, I mean, I had a garden a long time before I ever did this, but this is just, and that's when, you know, when I tell you all these things I'm doing, I don't want you to think that you have to make it this complicated. It doesn't have to be. You can just stick seeds in the ground and they'll grow. But those are things that you can do that do enhance the ability of the plants to really, you know, flourish. And then of course the rest is nature. You know, we need sun, we need water, but don't underestimate the power of love. And I do say that seriously. I mean, I'm totally serious about it. When we love our plants and we love the process and we appreciate them and we appreciate the microbes and the worms, I really believe that we are part of the garden. We are, it's not like we are here and here's our garden and that's our garden. We are an aspect of the garden. And when we love that process and we want to learn from the plants about what they need and how they thrive and they feel our appreciation, I am completely serious about this, even though it might sound a little unusual. I feel the same way about making food, that when we make our food with love, that we have a very different meal. And that's one of the problems with the so-called convenience foods. You know, we're getting just something and all we care about is convenience. Somebody else made it. Hey, let them do the work. You know, what kind of appreciation is that for the process? And so when we cook with love and we grow with love, it's just like all our other relationships. We know that our other relationships work a lot better, even if it's a reciprocal, you know, husband, wife, parent, child, brother, sister. You know, we want things from each other, but if we're really demanding and it's like, well, what's the matter with you? Why aren't you doing this? We're not going to get such great results. But when we truly respect and love the other and we want what's good for them, and we also ask for what we want. So my plants want to grow because they love me too. So there we have it. Now you know, I'm out of the closet. There you go. So on that note, if you like to read amazing books by amazing people, there's a book called Braiding Sweetgrass. Has anybody here read that? Braiding like braiding hair. Braiding Sweetgrass. That's one word. And the author is Robin Wall Kimmerer, Kimmerer. But if you just look up Braiding Sweetgrass, you'll find it. And I've read it 3 times and I'm just starting on the 4th. Fabulous book. She has an amazing perspective where she is, her father is Native American, her mother is white, and she is probably in her 50s now. And so she was raised with some of the Native American kinds of ways of connecting and feeling like the plants and the animals are kin. They're not objects. But she also, because she loved plants, she went to college and became a PhD botanist and is a professor of botany in colleges. So she understands all about plants from the scientific perspective. And she also has this other very deep spiritual connection with plants. And she brings those together in her book in a wonderful way. So anyway, and you can hear some of her talks if you look her up on YouTube. But the book is a treat. You really, if you're a reader, I think you would really enjoy her perspective. And she's big into gardening.
And you're reading the same book for the 4th time, or she has more books?
I'm reading the same book for the 4th time over a period of years. She has written one other book, which I haven't read, and it's called, I think it's just called Mosses. Maybe there's 2 words, something about moss though. Anyway, apparently it's a really good book too, but the reason I haven't gotten it yet is because I've totally switched over to Kindle books, and that one's not available on Kindle. And it's very rare for me to want to hold a big old heavy book anymore because I read in the middle of the night a lot in bed, and my Kindle can just be easy to hold, and I don't have to have the light on or anything. So anyway, I know a lot of people are just the opposite, and they don't like to read on electronic things. They want a physical book. But so anyway, her Moss book is only physical book. So I haven't read it yet. So
I've gotten into Audible books because then I can do anything I want.
Yeah, I know. I like that too. And she might have that. And if she does have that one on Audible, that would be great. If she's reading it herself, that would be really great. Because she writes in a very poetic manner in a lot of her stories, because she tells a lot of stories, And so anyway, that would be great on Audible if it's available. So yeah, Amy.
Have you seen the documentary Code Blue?
Not yet, but it's on my list. Did you watch it?
No, we're maybe going to watch it tonight after the
Oh, good idea.
potluck. So
yeah, no, it's going to be a really great one to watch.
What's it called?
Code Blue. It's by Sarai Stancic is a medical doctor, and she had MS, and she treated herself successfully with MS with a whole foods plant-based diet. And so anyway, it's a very impressive story. I have not seen it yet.
Is it on Amazon or Netflix?
Is it on?
it's on Sue, it's on Amazon, and it's not free. It's not on Amazon Prime. You'll have to rent it, which is $4 or something.
No,
Cool.
I'm definitely gonna watch that. I had actually invited her to come and speak at Veg Fest, and we might have her next year. I don't know.
So Delisa,
yes,
the Braiding Sweetgrass and Gathering Moss are on Audible.
Okay, well maybe I'll just have to do that because I listen to things all the time while I'm out in the garden and everything, but it's usually just something on YouTube that I don't watch things. I just listen to video. So another really great documentary to watch is called Fantastic Fungi. Have you heard of that?
Mm-hmm.
That just came out that we could watch publicly in March. And I think you have to watch it on Vimeo. I don't think that you can watch it anywhere else.
Watch it on what?
Vimeo, Vimeo.
Never heard of it.
Yeah, it's a place where people can host videos. But if you go to vimeo.com and you look up Fantastic Fungi, you can rent it or buy it. We bought it. It's not a physical DVD, but just because I knew I'd want to watch it multiple times and maybe share it with people. The person who did the photography, it's all about fungi, and so how they grow fast out of the ground. Well, he's got all this time release photography where these are just coming up. They just look like flowers blooming, just all these different colors and shapes and then of course a lot of computer animation of showing the mycelial networks underground just spreading like this underground web. And he calls it like the internet of nature, that we can literally signals are spreading all underground through this mycelial network. And that's what we're doing when we're planting plants. That's one reason why, as much as I like to grow things in pots, I kind of like to have them in the ground where they can spread out further. But even the mycelial network in a pot even is helpful. But just imagining that, if my plants need a drink, they can just get some from the lake or something, from the mycelial network. So, all right. Well, so tonight at 6:00 we have the our virtual Alaska Vegan Society potluck, and so that's at 6:00 if you can join us. and we'll just have some chit chat. And then by popular demand, I got some people talking about how to grow potatoes in pots. And even though I haven't ever harvested potatoes in pots, I can at least give some information about it. And so I'm going to talk about that tonight. And so that'll be fun, just to connect with the other AVS people. So if you can come to that.
How do we join that?
Pardon?
How do we join that?
So you're not on the AVS list then. So one thing you ought to do, I could put you on the list, but for tonight, but if you want to go to alaskaveg.org, and that's the website for the Alaska Vegan Society. And then there's a place to add your name to the email list, and then you will get the emails about it. And if you do that today, you will get, there's going to be a reminder email coming out at 5 o'clock with the link to it.
Oh, okay.
Because the potluck is at 6. So if you do that before then, you should get that.
Delisa, there's some correspondence on the Facebook page that is directed at you as well. I didn't know if you saw it or not.
No.
When you get around to it, someone wants you to join something.
Oh, I very seldom go on Facebook. I'd much rather have my hands in the dirt than on a computer.
Understood.
Which I've worked pretty well, and they don't look too bad, but my hands are usually pretty dirty, which is good for us, by the way, because the mycorrhizal fungi out there, not just the fungi, but all the microbes in the garden feed our microbes, and it's good for our own personal microbiome to get out in the dirt, because we want as many different kinds of microbes in our system as, even though everybody in the world is now afraid of getting a virus and they are getting germ phobia, we need to not have that germ phobia, because we need a wide variety of these microbes in our own body so that we have a good microbiome to protect us from an imbalance of the unhealthy ones. So get out and get dirty.
I have a question. I see Mary is applying something, and I am itching because I was in the yard yesterday on a dandelion hunt, and I didn't realize how much I was getting bit. What do you use, Delisa, for mosquito repellent?
I don't.
You don't? Okay.
Peppermint. It's peppermint essential oil. It has to have rosemary in it, but I think it's mainly the peppermint, and they do not like it when it's fresh. They'll stay away.
Okay.
Peppermint oil.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that sounds like a good thing. I haven't tried it. The mosquitoes did get bad here yesterday, but they haven't been bad until they get bad in the evening, but usually during the day they're not.
I don't know where my stuff is.
What's that?
I was thinking that I bought some really effective repellent in a little small cobalt bottle, and I think I might have got it at Botanical Gardens that had some kind of essential oil in it. So I didn't know if it might be on the same line as what Mary.
Well, maybe so. And with peppermint, you might want to dilute it a little, because it is pretty strong and it can kind of burn you if you're not careful. But if all you need is just a little bit, you can, I don't know. I haven't used it.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Stink keep insects, kinds of insects. So I'm not talking about if you're out there like doing field work. If you burn anything like if you're out on the river and you burn dried mossy stuff, that'll keep them away. Camping and
well, citronella is supposed to help too. That stuff that you can buy. I know some years it's pretty bad, but the sun's coming out again. That's nice. So does anybody have a nice natural way to handle mosquito bites? What do you put on mosquito bites? Anybody?
aloe.
Aloe? Mm-hmm. Okay. I used to have a real strong reaction to mosquito bites and, get huge welts, and now I don't. And I don't know why. maybe I quit being upset about getting them. It's like, okay, well, I got a mosquito bite.
Yeah, your body quit reacting. My father went through that, but I'm not as lucky so far.
Yeah, well, I mean, it'll itch for a while, but it doesn't turn into a huge welt, and I mean, it's just not a big deal. It's like, oh, okay. But if they're really swarming me, I just avoid them. I do cover, like when I take a walk in the evening. I'll often wear, I cover up and I have a hood on my head. I have a little sweatshirt with a hood, and look at those microgreens.
Woo!
That's why I'm showing. So
Oh,
they're
look.
just about ready. And
They look ready to me. So how many of you are growing microgreens?
Not yet, but I've got your video.
Yeah, even though I have stuff, growing outside, I usually keep microgreens growing in the house. Although, I don't know, I might not keep doing that if I have so many things out there that I don't need more.
I've gone through a couple rounds with the big trays, and I'm now saving the mushroom containers to do smaller trays because I couldn't keep up.
You couldn't eat it all? Oh.
No, not on my own. And so I couldn't keep up. And so, and I don't have the artificial lights, so they'll get leggy, especially the peas. So I'm going to start doing them probably in the fall in the mushroom containers and
okay.
sequentially. Yeah.
Okay. Whatever works for you. At least you can grow these things. You might want to get a little lamp, at least big enough for a tray, because it's nice to be able to have those fresh vegetables like that. All right. So you guys are pretty much, most of you are growing something now. So in 2 weeks, how about if we all, if you can get Zoom on your phone, we could all go do show and tell. How about that?
I'll give that a try.
Okay, because I'd love to see what everybody else is doing instead of just what I'm doing. So, all right. Well, this has been fun, and I did record it, so I'm going to send it out with, with a